it was around 4 years ago. 4 years ago now. I used to go out to get some tree logs for a guy with my brother-in-law and his 9-ton truck out to the back of Manumbah, which is near Nanango, or just outside of Nanango, heading towards Gameri. We drove on a dirt road for a fair way, and the day that I had the encounter was probably around 9 o'clock in the morning. Me and the brother-in-law were out in the truck, we were heading down the road, and I just wanted to go for a pee. I just wanted to stop and relieve myself and all that sort of thing. I asked the brother-in-law to pull the truck over. He pulled the truck to one side of the road. I got out, and for some reason I decided I wanted to go through the barbed wire fence. So I crawled through the barbed wire fence and I headed towards a tree. And just as I put my hand on a tree, and this rather large gorilla man-looking thing came sort of charging straight at me. Of course, I turned and headed back to the truck as quick as I could. And the funny thing was, I was getting snagged as I went through the barbed wire fence on the way in, but I think about it now, I didn't even touch the barbed wire on the way out and actually slid through the side drain and hit the front wheel of the truck, which gave me momentum to get up into the passenger seat of the truck. So, yeah, that was basically what happened out at Nanango. Very large, cranky, man-like sort of gorilla type thing. I got the impression he just basically didn't want me in that area at the time.
Okay, so we can put that down to about 2015 out the back of Nanango, collecting wood with did you say your brother?
Brother-in-law.
You've stopped on the side of the road. This is a dirt road. You've gone through the fence. Now, on the other side of the fence, can you describe the terrain? Like, what sort of foliage was there, the trees, the bush, etc.?
At that part on Manumbah Road, it wasn't too built up, but behind the first, as you sort of go into the bush, you find gum trees, and then the bush might thicken up a bit. So it was mainly gum with brownie coloured, 1.5 foot tall type, I call it mother-in-law grass. And it's just those tufts of that brownie looking flexy type grass in amongst the trees. Big trees around the place. I think the one I leant on was probably 6 foot across. It was a big gum tree.
Was this flat ground or was it hilly?
Where I was flat. Behind it, it started to go off into a creek. I know there's a creek over behind in amongst the trees. I've just thought that that's maybe where he was coming from. He was pulling saplings out of the ground, gum saplings out of the ground. I leaned on that big tree I was talking about to have a pee, and I looked up. He was hunched over. Looked like he was going to launch, much the same as if you see on documentaries, you see gorillas charging and all that sort of thing when somebody does something wrong. That's how he sort of was. He was leaning on sort of one arm, like a football player, ready to launch off the ground. But he was really high, really muscular, not as hairy as what some people say Yowie encounters are. Like, I could see a lot of muscle. He was very, very strong, really well built, big shoulders.
He saw you before you saw him?
He would have, yeah. He was on the way to me when I leaned on the tree. And then when I saw him, I should have known better not to look at him, but I looked.
At what stage did he start pulling the saplings out of the ground?
He was like pulling anything that was getting in his way. He was just ripping it out of the ground. Pretty horrific.
Okay, so you've locked eyes. He's seen you. He's in football position, one arm on the ground. He's looking at you. What happens then?
He just charged. There was growling. I don't know whether you could say it was even a growl. I'd say it was more a roar. It was a roar. And he was charging and pulling things out of the ground. And after that 2 or 3 seconds that I'm looking at this thing coming at me, I've decided that discretion's the better part of valor. I wasn't sticking around for him to to grab hold of me. And like I said, mate, I slid under that bottom piece of barbed wire and it never touched a piece of clothing, and I slid all the way through to the tyre, so I was moving.
When you first saw him, how far away was he to you?
10, 15 metres, I guess.
How far away were you from the fence?
Probably about the same, about 10. I was about 10 in. I was probably a little bit closer than he was when he started the whooping and all the ruckus that he was carrying on with.
You've locked eyes with him. Did he have an expression on his face at the time?
Yeah. When you're a young fella and you got into a few fights and things like that, and the sort of look that you get when you want to eat someone, that's roundabout. that's probably the best description. He was just pissed off. He was just angry.
When you first looked at him, he was just in that position. He didn't crouch to that position. He was already in that position.
It was like he was cocked and ready to go.
Well, that would sort of indicate that he's seen you coming.
Yep. I'd say he saw me coming through the fence, and the thing that triggered him, it was like I touched his tree.
Now, if he was going at you and you're going towards the fence and it's about the same distance, you must have been doing quite a pace.
On the way out, I was really moving, and I know he could have, if he wanted, I know he stopped at where I left. So he basically stopped all the shuffling inside 10 metres and all the roaring and all the mucking around that made me move. He stopped by the time he got to where I was. He just stopped. Thinking about it now, it just felt like a charge. Get out of here, I don't want you here. And I don't know why. Yeah, I really can't understand what I did wrong.
How far away was the foliage from the fence? Say, if you got over the fence, how far away is the treed area?
It started behind that tree that I was. The foliage started to build up in behind there. Like I said before, it wasn't that thick. It was thick, but it wasn't lantana involved. There was no enveloped lantana, nothing like that. It was like I've been past there before, and I've been around there for a fair while, and I've been past the same spot where I won't get out, obviously, ever again. From a car or a truck, you can see that the land slopes back down to a cutaway creek type thing behind. I would imagine that creek is back 200-300 metres behind that, and you can actually see the ground starting to slope away from that.
Basically, from the fence line to where you were standing, it's almost like an open ground?
Yeah, yep.
Which would be the reason why he stopped?
Yeah, it was just open ground, and that's probably why I walked through to the tree. For some reason, I thought I should go in and use the tree that day. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why I even went through the fence.
What height would you estimate him to be?
Crouching down, easy 5 foot off the ground, 5.5 feet off the ground at the shoulders, when he was leaning in that, crouching in that position. Big arms.
Standing up?
Standing up, 7.5, 8 foot. That's a kind estimate.
What was the build of him?
Very athletic, extremely athletic. Big chest. I'd be proud if I had pecs like that. He was a big boy. The arms seemed a little bit longer than normal, than like a human arm, but I can remember big hands, really big forearms. When I say big forearms, I'm saying sort of well proportioned in the muscles. You know, like the shoulders. Any bloke would be proud of having a set of shoulders like that. The neck a little bit shorter than a normal neck. People say that they haven't got any neck. Definitely see, but it was a really thick, like a wrestler's type neck. Those big muscles that come around the side of the neck, they were there, and I guess that is what makes them look like they have very short necks.
You're looking at the hair. How would you describe the length and the type of hair? Is it matted, straight, clean, unkept?
He wasn't really unkept. It wasn't as thick as some people say they are. You could see through to the skin underneath. You could see the colour of the skin. A good tanned like a darker than normal good tan, I guess. But he was a little bit dark underneath the probably reddy browny type hair.
Was it something like a human, clean sort of skin, or does it look weathered?
It looked like leather. It was tough. Like he was tough. Tough leathery look on the arms, shoulders. The front of his chest was probably the cleanest of it, which had hardly any hair on his chest. He had hair on his chest, but he had hardly any hair on his chest.
Was the hair sparse all over like that, or did it have heavier patches where you couldn't see through the hair?
The calf, there was a lot of hair there, but there wasn't that much hair on that big part of your leg.
Did it have less hair on the face?
There wasn't a lot of hair on the face. I didn't look at that for very long because it's not a pretty thing. They're not real pretty. And the big chisel type teeth. I can remember the big chisel type teeth, but he was showing his teeth a lot. And there was a bit of drool going on.
You saw at one stage teeth, and you're saying he's drooling. Well,
the drool is, I don't know whether he was just pissed off. He was really pissed off, and it was like a drool.
Are you sure he just didn't find you attractive?
I think that's the case. Normal type nose, but broad. You know, not as pronounced as what we have on our faces. But the nose was there, possibly turned up a little bit, big flary nostrils. His nostrils were flared. That's probably because he was pissed off at me being there. I tried not to look at that for too long.
Did it have large eyes and eye ridges?
I had the impression it looked like a gorilla. First thought, when I looked at it, it looked like a gorilla. But then I noticed the nose and eyes sort of shaped like ours, but they were a little bit bigger. They weren't much bigger. They were bigger. They were a bigger type eye, bigger type pupil. And the whites, well, when he was cranky, he had lots of whites of his eyes. But his pupils were larger than a normal man.
But you're saying that it did definitely have whites around the pupil?
Yeah, no, the whites were there. The whites were there. His eyes opened right up. He certainly didn't like me.
The eye ridges, they were pronounced?
It gave an impression of a chisel-type cheekbone under the eye sockets, and the brow ridge made it look like big sunken type eye sockets.
Well, you've mentioned the word gorilla, so I'll ask, did it most resemble, say, a primate, human, Neanderthal, relic hominid?
Tending to be a bit more apish, but with the human features. He didn't have the big canines like you see if you watch a gorilla charge. Gorillas have really large canines. He didn't have the big canines.
With that, I mean, you're looking at the mouth, you're seeing the teeth. What sort of mouth did it have? Did it have like a muzzle, as some people describe, or did it look more human?
No, it was more human. Like a very square jaw. You know, like I said, a wrestler, very chiseled, not a lot of fat around the face. Even had muscles in his eyebrows.
Did he appear to have any type of beard or extra hair around the chin?
No. Thinking about it now, he must have been youngish. He had a little bit of hair, but 4-day growth, maybe 3-day growth. That's about it.
Oh, you've indicated that he seems young. Can you estimate an age?
Youngish.
Are we talking teens or 20s?
No, he's a bit more mature than that, I would suggest. Early 30s, maybe. Everything was all in the right places. It was all chiselled and pronounced. There was nothing baby about it. It wasn't pretty. He was fairly well weathered. It was leathery. It looked like it was really tough. A lot tougher than a normal human type skin. It was probably, it was a bit like a gorilla skin, I guess, like a leathery looking thing. Really leathery, been out in the sun for a long time.
So your reaction was flight. You've made it back to the fence. You slide underneath.
I could hear him stop roughly where I left. That's where he stopped. And I don't know whether it was because of the truck, because the brother-in-law was sitting in the front of the truck. I don't know. But he stopped where I left the tree. I said before, it was around about 8 to 10 metres in to the tree, and he was possibly 8, possibly 10 metres further back behind that. So that's 20 metres. If he really wanted to hurt me, he could have done it quite easily. In seconds. In seconds. There's that much power. There was that much power in this thing. He would have been on me in 2 seconds, 3 seconds, if he wanted to.
How did that affect you at the time?
I got in the truck. I got into the truck and I said, "Did you bloody see that?" And the brother-in-law didn't even know what was. He was looking out the side at something else, and he said, "What, the deer chase you or something?"
You're out of breath. Were you panting? Were you beside yourself? How were you?
Oh yeah, I was out of breath. By the time I got in the truck, I was actually sweating. I know that much, and it was only 8 to 10 metres back to the truck, but I was sweating.
When you're sitting in the truck, were you looking back at the bush? Could you see him at that stage?
When he stopped, I don't know where he went. He was gone. He could have even gone up the tree. I don't know. I don't know. He was just gone, and there was still dust. Whether it was from me, but there was dust in behind the tree. So I don't know whether he scuffled around the back of the tree or whether he shot through back down to that creek that I told you about.
Yeah, a couple of historical reports that we have from there. We have 1938, Clyde Shepherdson, who's in his 70s. He contacted us in 99. He had kept this secret for approximately 60 years before he came to us. This is audio report number 20. He was hunting with a friend. They were mid-teens at the time. They had a .22 rifle. They were bending through, going through some vines, and they came across a rusty yellow camel colour creature standing up against the tree. I think that had it cornered to some extent, and this thing turned aggressive. It had put its arms up in the air. It was snarling. Broad shoulders, broad forehead, flat nose, not much hair on the face, dark skin as you described. And he sort of described it as like a Stone Age man, as we would probably put down to like a relic sort of hominid. 2015, you'd be familiar with this one, with Wayne and his family camping at Eastern Anango State Forest. And they found that massive handprint on the back of their four-wheel drive, measuring probably about 14 inches with the pointy fingertips. And this is audio report number 135. This really had an impact on you.
It took me probably 18 months to go anywhere in the bush without my brother-in-law, my wife. Nobody could get me to go in the bush for about 18 months, and I wasn't going back in for no one. I know you've had a couple of cases. I think you would understand what I'm trying to tell you. It's something that that won't go away. I'm very wary now. I won't go as far in